Doohan Park sat in his tiny apartment on Space Station Aurora 7, staring at the glowing numbers on his credit screen. The balance showed only 47 credits left, not even enough for next week's oxygen tax. He rubbed his tired eyes and leaned back in his worn-out chair, which creaked under his weight. Outside his small window, the endless space stretched dark and deep, sprinkled with distant stars. The station's giant solar panels moved slowly, catching light from the nearby sun. Their movement cast moving shadows across his room's metal walls. "Great, just great," he muttered, running a hand through his messy black hair. The tools scattered across his work table caught his eye. Those tools were the only things of real value he owned, passed down from his father, who had also been a spacecraft mechanic. His wrist communicator beeped. A message from Jaho flashed on the screen. "Hey, got another repair job. Rich guy's pleasure yacht. Interested?" Doohan's fingers moved quickly over the holographic keyboard. "When and where?" "Deck 12, Bay 7. 1 hour. Don't be late." At least it was something. Doohan grabbed his toolbox and checked his reflection in the bathroom mirror. His face looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes from working long hours. His blue work uniform had seen better days, but it was clean. That would have to do. The station's corridors buzzed with life as he made his way to the lower decks. Humans mixed with dozens of alien species, all going about their daily business. The air smelled of metal, recycled oxygen, and food from the many small restaurants that lined the walkways. The sweet smell of Korean food from Yuna's restaurant made his stomach growl. He hadn't eaten since yesterday, saving his last credits for the oxygen tax. As he passed by, Yuna waved from behind her counter. She often gave him extra portions when he could afford to eat there, worried about how thin he was getting. The elevator ride to Deck 12 took 5 minutes. This deck was different from his level. Everything here sparkled. The walls shone with expensive metal plates. The air smelled better, filtered through premium systems. This was where the rich kept their private ships. Bay 7 was huge. The pleasure yacht inside it was even bigger than Doohan had expected. Its sleek silver hull gleamed under the bay lights. This single ship probably cost more than he would earn in 10 lifetimes. Jaiho waited near the ship's entry ramp. "There you are. The owner wants the engine fixed before tomorrow. Says it's making weird sounds." "What's he paying?" 200 credits. Doohan's heart sank. That was barely enough for the oxygen tax and some food. A job this big should pay at least 5 times that amount. But he couldn't say no. He needed those credits. As he walked toward the ship, something caught his eye. In Bay 8, a strange glow came from behind a ship's window. Doohan looked closer. His breath caught in his throat. A woman stood there, but she wasn't human. Her skin seemed to shine with its own light, like starlight trapped beneath glass. She was luminary, one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. Their kind rarely came to this part of the station. She turned her head and their eyes met. Hers were like swirling galaxies, deep purple with spots of light. She smiled. Doohan quickly looked away and hurried into the yacht. Rich aliens like her didn't mix with broke mechanics like him. He had work to do and credits to earn if he wanted to keep breathing station air for another week. 3 days after fixing the pleasure yacht, Doohan sat in Yuna's restaurant, trying to make his small bowl of ramen last as long as possible. The 200 credits from the job were already gone, most of it to the oxygen tax. At least he could breathe for another week. The restaurant's door chimed. Doohan didn't look up until he noticed the other customers had gone quiet. A soft, star-like glow filled the room. Doohan Park. A musical voice spoke his name. He turned and nearly fell off his chair. The luminary woman from Bay 8 stood there. Up close, her skin truly looked like flowing starlight. Her long silver hair floated as if moved by an invisible wind. She wore a simple white dress that seemed to shift colors when she moved. "Ah, yes." Doohan stood up quickly, almost knocking over his ramen. Everyone in the restaurant stared at them. "I am Era." Her galaxy-like eyes studied him with interest. "May I sit?" Du-Han nodded, still shocked. Yuna hurried over with a clean cloth to wipe the table, but Era gestured that it wasn't necessary. "I watched you work on that yacht," Era said. "You fixed in 2 hours what 3 other mechanics couldn't fix in 2 days." Du-Han shifted in his seat. The sound was coming from a loose quantum stabilizer. "It's a common problem in that model." Yet the others missed it. Era leaned forward. "I have a proposal for you, Du-Han Park." He glanced around. Every eye in the restaurant was on them. "What kind of proposal?" "I need a personal spacecraft engineer, someone who understands engines the way you do, someone who can maintain my fleet." Du-Han's heart beat faster. "Your fleet?" "I own 17 ships." She said it like someone might say they owned 17 pairs of socks. "But that's only part of the job." "What's the other part?" Era's light dimmed slightly. "I need someone who understands human culture. A guide. She paused, searching for the right word. "Companion." Du-Han's mouth felt dry. "Companion. To accompany me to social events. To explain human customs. To help me navigate your culture." She straightened in her chair. "You would live in my ship home. All expenses paid, plus a salary of 10,000 credits per month." Du-Han choked on his water. 10,000 credits was more than he made in 6 months. "Why me?" he managed to ask. Era's light pulsed gently. "Because you are skilled. Because you work hard. Because when you fixed that yacht, you didn't just do the job. You checked everything else too. And because," she hesitated, "you didn't stare at me like I was some kind of exotic creature when you saw me in Bay 8. Du-Han remembered their brief eye contact. He had looked away because he felt out of place, not because she was alien. "What's the catch?" he asked. "No catch. But," Era looked around at the watching crowd, "people will talk. Some won't approve. Can you handle that?" Du-Han thought about his empty credit account, about his tiny apartment, about eating ramen for dinner 3 days in a row. But mostly, he thought about the sadness he glimpsed in those galaxy eyes when she said the word companion. "When do I start?" he asked. Era's smile lit up the whole restaurant. "Literally. Tomorrow. Pack your things tonight. My assistant Neri will help you move." As she stood to leave, she placed a credit chip on the table. "For your ramen," she said softly, then walked out, trailing Starlight behind her. Du-Han stared at the chip. It held 500 credits. The bowl of ramen had cost 5. Du-Han stood in his new room, mouth open in surprise. The space was bigger than his entire old apartment. One wall was completely clear, showing the stars outside. The bed looked softer than anything he'd ever slept on. Even the air smelled sweet, like flowers he couldn't name. "Is it suitable?" Nari asked. The luminary assistant's skin glowed a gentle blue, unlike Era's starlight shimmer. She held a tablet, checking off items on a list. "It's amazing," Du-Han said, putting down his small bag of belongings. His few shirts and tools looked out of place in such a fancy room. "Era wishes to see you in the garden chamber once you're settled," Neri said. "Down the hall, 3rd door on the right." The garden chamber turned out to be a huge room filled with plants from 100 different worlds. Some glowed like luminary skin. Others floated in the air without roots. Small creatures that looked like flying jellyfish drifted between the plants. Era stood near a pool of silver liquid that moved like it was alive. Her glow brightened when she saw him. "Du-Han, what do you think of your room?" "It's too much," he said honestly. "I don't need something so fancy." Era's light dimmed slightly. "Do you not like it?" "No, I love it. It's just..." Du-Han struggled to find the right words. "I'm not used to such nice things." "Then it's time you got used to them." Era smiled. "Are you hungry?" I had my food synthesizers programmed with Korean recipes. Du-Han's stomach answered for him with a growl. Era laughed, a sound like singing bells. They sat at a small table among the strange plants. The food synthesizer produced perfect bulgogi and rice. Du-Han took a bite, and his eyes widened. It tasted just like his mother's cooking. "Tell me about Korean food," Era said, trying her own plate with careful interest. "Why is it important to you?" As they ate, Du-Han explained about growing up in a Korean-American family, about his mother's cooking, about how food connected him to his heritage, even in space. Era listened with real interest, asking clever questions. "Now you tell me something about luminary culture," Du-Han said. Era's light pulsed thoughtfully. "See how my skin glows. Each pattern has meaning. Like human facial expressions, but more complex." She demonstrated, her skin shifting through patterns. "This means happiness. This means curiosity. This," her glow turned soft and pink, "means friendship." Can all luminary control their light so well? "We learn from childhood, like you learn to smile or frown." She leaned forward. "Would you like to see something special?" At Du-Han's nod, Era waved her hand. The garden chamber's lights dimmed. Then her skin began to glow in complex patterns, projecting images into the air around them. Du-Han gasped as he found himself surrounded by scenes from her homeworld. Tall crystal cities, oceans that glowed from within, flying creatures that looked like living rainbows. "This is beautiful," he whispered. "Beauty should be shared," Era said softly. Her light shifted to that gentle pink again. "Tomorrow, will you show me more of your culture? Perhaps visit your friend Yuna's restaurant?" Du-Han smiled. "I'd like that." As they finished their meal, talking about their different worlds, Du-Han realized something. For the first time since coming to Station Aurora 7, he felt at home. 2 weeks had passed since Du-Han moved into Era's ship home. He sat in Yuna's restaurant with his old friend Jeho, eating real, non-synthesized kimchi. Era was meeting with other luminary traders, giving him some free time. "People are talking," Jeho said, looking worried. "The rich folks aren't happy about you living with her." Du-Han put down his chopsticks. "Why should they care?" "Because you're human. Because you used to be poor." Jeho lowered his voice. "Some say you tricked her somehow. Others say you're just using her for money." "That's not true," Du-Han said too loudly. Other customers looked their way. "I know that," Jeho said quickly. "But the station's upper class doesn't like it when someone moves up in life. Especially not so quickly." Du-Han was about to answer when his wrist communicator beeped. A message from Mary. "Come quickly. There's a problem." He found Era in her private meeting room. Her skin glowed dim and gray. A sign of distress, he had learned. 3 other luminaries stood with her. Their skin patterns showed anger and disgust. "There he is," one said in perfect English. "The human pet." Du-Han stopped in the doorway. Era's glow flickered with embarrassment. "Engineer," she corrected. "Du-Han is my engineer and cultural advisor. A primitive species can't possibly understand our technology." Another luminary said, "What could he teach you about culture? How to eat with sticks?" Du-Han felt his face grow hot, but before he could speak, Era's glow suddenly blazed bright. "Du-Han fixed the quantum drive on my flagship in 1 day," she said sharply. "The same drive your advanced engineers said would take a month to repair. And yes, he teaches me about human culture. About their food, their art, their music. Things you're too proud to learn about." The third luminary stepped forward. "Your father won't approve of this arrangement. A luminary of your status, living with a human mechanic. It's shameful." "My father doesn't control my life," Era said. But Du-Han saw her light dim slightly. "We'll see." The 3 luminary left, their skin patterns showing threats and warnings. When they were gone, Du-Han turned to Era. "I'm sorry. I should leave. I'm causing you trouble." "No." Era moved closer, her glow returning to its normal starlight pattern. "You have nothing to be sorry for. They're the ones who should apologize." "But your father is far away on our homeworld. She touched his arm gently. Her hand felt warm, like sunlight on skin. "Duhan, when you explain human things to me, you never treat me like I'm stupid for not knowing. When I show you luminary technology, you're excited to learn. That's rare. Most species just want to use each other." Duhan looked at where her glowing hand rested on his arm. "I like learning about your culture. And I like—" He paused. "I like spending time with you." Era's glow shifted to that soft pink he was starting to recognize. "Then stay. Please." "Okay," he said. "But maybe we should get back to those engineering lessons, just to prove them wrong." Era laughed, her light brightening the whole room. "Yes, and after that, you can teach me more about eating with sticks." They smiled at each other, both knowing that the real challenges were just beginning. But for now, in that moment, neither of them cared what anyone else thought. A month into his new job, Duhan was checking Era's favorite ship, the Star Dancer, when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see a male luminary whose skin glowed with deep blue and gold patterns. The stranger wore expensive clothes that seemed to be made of living metal. "So you're the human mechanic," the luminary said. His voice was smooth but cold. "I am Tai Yang." Duhan wiped his hands on a cloth. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Era." Tai Yang looked around the engine room like it was dirty. "We have business to discuss." Nari appeared at the door. "Era will see you in the meeting room," she told Tai Yang. After he left, she turned to Duhan. "Be careful of him. He's been trying to buy Era's shipping company for years." Later that evening, Duhan found Era in the garden chamber. Her skin glowed dim and worried. "Tai Yang wants to merge our companies," she said. "He says it would be a good match, just like we would be." Duhan's stomach felt tight. "What did you tell him?" "That I'm not interested." Era touched a floating plant with one glowing finger. "But he doesn't take no for an answer. He thinks everything has a price." The next morning, Duhan started his usual check of the Star Dancer. Something felt wrong. He opened the engine panel and his heart nearly stopped. Someone had loosened the quantum stabilizer cables. If the ship had started, it would have exploded. "Era," he called into his communicator. "Come to the engine room. Now." She arrived quickly, followed by Nari. Duhan showed them the sabotage. "Someone tried to make it look like my work was bad," he explained. "See, they used the same technique I used on that yacht last month, but they did it wrong." Era's skin flashed with angry red patterns. "Tai Yang. He must have gotten his engineers to study your work." "If Duhan hadn't checked so carefully," Nari said quietly. "Get me the station security feeds," Era ordered. The video showed everything. Tai Yang's engineers sneaking in at night, the sabotage, their quick escape. Duhan expected Era to call station security. Instead, she called for a meeting with all the major traders and shippers on the station. Everyone came. No one ignored a call from a luminary trader. They gathered in Era's largest meeting room. Tai Yang stood near the front, his skin glowing with confidence, until Era played the security video. "This is how Tai Yang does business," she announced to the shocked crowd. "He tried to destroy my ship. He tried to hurt my engineer. He tried to ruin my company." Tai Yang's glow turned gray with fear. "I don't know anything about this." "The video shows your engineers," Duhan said. "And only someone who studied my work could copy it, even if they did it badly." Other traders moved away from Tai Yang. In station society, trying to destroy someone's ship was the worst crime possible. "Leave my ship," Era told him. "If you ever come near me or Duhan again, every trader on this station will know what you did." As Tai Yang slunk away, his skin dark with shame, Era turned to Duhan. Her glow was bright and proud. "Thank you," she said softly. "You saved more than just my ship today." Duhan smiled. That's what friends do. But when their eyes met, they both knew they were becoming more than just friends. A month into his new job, Duhan was checking Era's favorite ship, the Star Dancer, when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see a male luminary whose skin glowed with deep blue and gold patterns. The stranger wore expensive clothes that seemed to be made of living metal. "So you're the human mechanic," the luminary said. His voice was smooth but cold. "I am Ta Yang." Duhan wiped his hands on a cloth. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Ara." Ta Yang looked around the engine room like it was dirty. "We have business to discuss." Nari appeared at the door. "Ara will see you in the meeting room," she told Ta Yang. After he left, she turned to Duhan. "Be careful of him. He's been trying to buy Ara's shipping company for years." Later that evening, Duhan found Ara in the garden chamber. Her skin glowed dim and worried. "Tai Yang wants to merge our companies," she said. "He says it would be a good match, just like we would be." Duhan's stomach felt tight. "What did you tell him?" "That I'm not interested." Ara touched a floating plant with one glowing finger, but he doesn't take no for an answer. He thinks everything has a price. The next morning, Duhan started his usual check of the Star Dancer. Something felt wrong. He opened the engine panel and his heart nearly stopped. Someone had loosened the quantum stabilizer cables. If the ship had started, it would have exploded. Ara. He called into his communicator. "Come to the engine room. Now." She arrived quickly, followed by Nari. Duhan showed them the sabotage. "Someone tried to make it look like my work was bad," he explained. "See, they used the same technique I used on that yacht last month, but they did it wrong." Era's skin flashed with angry red patterns. "Ta Yang. He must have gotten his engineers to study your work." "If Duhan hadn't checked so carefully," Nari said quietly. "Get me the station security feeds," Era ordered. The video showed everything. Tai Yang's engineers sneaking in at night. The sabotage. Their quick escape. Duhan expected Ara to call station security. Instead, she called for a meeting with all the major traders and shippers on the station. Everyone came. No one ignored a call from a luminary trader. They gathered in Era's largest meeting room. Tai Yang stood near the front, his skin glowing with confidence, until Era played the security video. "This is how Tai Yang does business," she announced to the shocked crowd. "He tried to destroy my ship. He tried to hurt my engineer. He tried to ruin my company." Tai Yang's glow turned gray with fear. "I don't know anything about this." "The video shows your engineers," Duhan said. "And only someone who studied my work could copy it, even if they did it badly." Other traders moved away from Tai Yang. In station society, trying to destroy someone's ship was the worst crime possible. "Leave my ship," Era told him. "If you ever come near me or Duhan again, every trader on this station will know what you did." As Tai Yang slunk away, his skin dark with shame, Era turned to Duhan. Her glow was bright and proud. "Thank you," she said softly. "You saved more than just my ship today." Duhan smiled. That's what friends do. But when their eyes met, they both knew they were becoming more than just friends. Word spread quickly through Station Aurora 7 about Duhan and Ara. They weren't trying to hide anymore. They ate together at Yuna's restaurant, walked together through the station's markets, attended trade meetings side by side. One morning, Jaho caught Duhan checking the Star Dancer's engines. "You're in trouble, my friend," Jaho said, looking worried. "Big trouble." Duhan wiped engine grease from his hands. "What now?" "People are saying you and Ara are, Jiho lowered his voice. "More than friends." "Does it matter what people say?" "It matters to the station council. They're worried other humans will start asking for special treatment from aliens." Jiho handed Duhan a tablet. "Look at this new rule they're talking about." The tablet showed a proposed law. No cross-species employment contracts allowed without council approval. Current contracts would need review. Duhan's hands tightened on the tablet. "They can't do this." "They're scared," Jiho said. Humans asking for better jobs, better pay, dating aliens. It changes everything they built here. Later that day, Neri found Duhan in the garden chamber. Her blue glow was dim with worry. Era's family sent a message, she said. They're not happy. They say she's forgetting her duties, breaking too many traditions. What duties? Luminary of her status are supposed to marry other luminary, keep bloodlines pure, keep trading powers in the right families. Neri's glow flickered. They say she's acting too human. Duhan felt sick. He was causing all these problems. Maybe if he left. The door opened and Ara walked in. Her skin glowed with angry red patterns. Don't even think about leaving, she said before Duhan could speak. I know that look on your face. I'm causing trouble for you, he said. With your family. With the station. No. Era moved closer. They're causing trouble because they're afraid of change, afraid of seeing that their old ways aren't always right. She took his hand, her glow turning to that special pattern he'd seen by the pool. Do you know what this pattern means yet? Duhan shook his head. It means love, she said softly. A pattern we're only supposed to show to family, to our chosen life partner. Duhan's heart beat faster. Era. I don't care what they say, she continued. I don't care about tradition. When I'm with you, I can be myself. All of myself. Not just the proper luminary trader everyone wants me to be. But your family will learn to understand. Or they won't. But I won't let them tell me who to love. The word hung in the air between them, glowing like Era's skin. I love you too, Duhan said. The words felt right, natural. Even if it breaks every rule on this station. Era's glow brightened until she looked like a star come to life. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his, a luminary gesture of deep affection. Her light wrapped around them both. Then let them talk, she whispered. Let them make their rules. We'll show them that love doesn't care about species or status or tradition. In that moment, surrounded by Era's starlight, Duhan knew she was right. Whatever came next, they would face it together. 2 messages arrived on the same day. The first came to Duhan's personal communicator during breakfast. The second came to Era's ship home just before dinner. Both messages would change everything. Earth's biggest shipping company wants to hire me, Duhan told Era as they sat in their usual spot in the garden chamber. They're offering me chief engineer position. Triple the salary I made before meeting you. Era's glow dimmed slightly. On Earth. Yes, they say they need someone who understands both human and alien technology. He looked down at the message again. It's a really good opportunity. Before Era could respond, Neri rushed in. Her blue glow was pulsing with worry. Your father's ship just entered station space, she told Era. He's demanding to speak with you. Era's light turned gray with shock. He's here. Now. And he's not alone. Neri's glow flickered nervously. He brought Tai Yang's father too. Duhan stood up. I should go. No. Era grabbed his hand. Stay. Please. They met Era's father in the main reception room. He was tall for a luminary, his skin glowing with formal patterns of authority. Tai Yang's father stood beside him, both of them looking at Duhan like he was dirt on their shoes. Daughter, Era's father said in a cold voice, this has gone on long enough. What has? Era's voice was steady, but her hand squeezed Duhan's tightly. This relationship with a human. He made the word human sound like a disease. You will return home immediately. Tai Yang has agreed to forgive your mistake. The marriage contract is ready. Marriage contract. Duhan looked at Era in surprise. I refused it 3 times already, she said. And I refuse it again. You have no choice, Tai Yang's father spoke up. Your trading license can be revoked. Your ships confiscated. All for breaking species mixing laws. Duhan felt sick. They were going to take everything from her, because of him. Go to Earth, Era said suddenly, turning to him. Take that job. What? They can't hurt you there. Earth doesn't follow station laws. Her glow was dim but determined. You can be safe, successful, and leave you. Du-Han shook his head. No. Both of you are being foolish, Era's father said. Humans and Luminary don't belong together. It's against nature. No, Du-Han said firmly. It's against your rules. There's a difference. He turned to Era. I won't go to Earth. Not without you. And I won't marry Tai Yang, Era told her father. Her glow strengthened, turning to that special love pattern that made her father step back in shock. Du-Han isn't my mistake. He's my choice. Then you choose to lose everything, Tai Yang's father warned. Era looked at Du-Han, her galaxy eyes shining. No, I choose to gain everything that really matters. You have one day, her father said. One day to change your mind, or face the consequences. After they left, Du-Han held Era close. Are you sure about this? You'd be giving up so much. Would you give up your Earth job for me? She asked. In a heartbeat. Era's glow turned bright and beautiful. Then I'm sure. We'll find a way. Together. They stood in each other's arms, surrounded by the strange garden's lights, knowing that tomorrow would bring their biggest challenge yet. The next morning, Du-Han and Era walked hand in hand to the station's main trading hall. Every important trader and council member was there. Era's father and Tai Yang's father stood at the front, ready to announce their punishment. But before they could speak, Yuna stepped forward. The old restaurant owner's voice was strong and clear. I want to invest in Era's company, she said. Everyone turned to stare at her. So do I, said Jaiho, standing up. One by one, other station merchants and traders stood. Humans, aliens, and even some Luminary, all offering to invest in Era's business. What is this? Era's father demanded. This is Station Aurora 7, Yuna said, where species from all over the galaxy come to trade, to learn from each other, to grow together. And your daughter, Jaiho added, was the first to truly understand this. She hired Du-Han not because he was human, but because he was the best person for the job. Era squeezed Du-Han's hand and stepped forward. Her glow was bright and confident. I'm starting a new company, she announced, one that will hire the best people, no matter their species. Du-Han will be my chief engineer and equal partner. You can't, Tai Yang's father protested. The station laws are changing, said a new voice. The station's head counselor stood up. We've voted this morning. The species mixing laws are finished. They have no place in our future. Du-Han looked at Era in surprise. She smiled. Nari and I were busy last night, she whispered, making calls, showing proof of how mixed species crews work better, how diversity makes businesses stronger. Era's father stepped forward. His glow showed confusion and something else, a hint of pride. You planned this, he said to his daughter. I learned from you, Era replied. You taught me to be a good trader, to see opportunities others miss. Well, I see the biggest opportunity of all, bringing people together instead of keeping them apart. The trading hall filled with applause. Even some of the older Luminary were showing approval patterns in their glow. What will you call this new company? Someone asked. Du-Han and Era looked at each other and smiled. Starlight Bridge, they said together. 6 months later, Starlight Bridge was the station's fastest-growing company. Their ships, crewed by humans and aliens working together, were known as the most reliable in the sector. Du-Han's parents came up from Earth to live on the station. His mother taught Era to cook real Korean food, while his father shared old engineer stories with her. Era's father, after seeing their success, finally gave them his blessing. In their garden chamber, now twice as big as before, Du-Han and Era sat by the silver pool. The floating jellyfish danced around them as always. Remember when you were broke and I was lonely? Era asked, her glow showing that special love pattern. "Best thing that ever happened to me," Du-Han said, pulling her close. Their story spread through the station and beyond. The tale of a broke human mechanic and a lonely alien girl who changed the rules of two societies. People said it was like something from an old romance story. But for Du-Han and Ara, sitting together in their garden of strange plants and floating lights, it wasn't just a story. It was proof that love could bridge any distance, even the space between stars.